Before paying off debt, most people believe they're in control of their income, but in reality, they're only seeing part of the picture. Every time money comes in, a portion of it is already committed. It might be a credit card bill, a personal loan installment, or accumulated interest that quietly grows in the background. That means your income is not entirely yours to direct. You're earning, but you're also servicing past decisions at the same time. And that creates a subtle but powerful limitation on your financial life. Think about what happens the moment your salary hits your account. Before you even consider saving, investing, or spending on things that genuinely matter to you, there's an invisible checklist waiting: minimum payments, due dates, penalties to avoid. This structure forces you into a reactive mode. You're not asking, what do I want my money to do for me? Instead, you're asking, what do I need to pay off first? That difference might seem small, but it completely changes your relationship with money. Once the debt is gone, that entire dynamic shifts. The same income suddenly feels different, not because it increased, but because its purpose changed. Instead of being divided between your present and your past, it becomes fully available for your future. You now decide where each rupee goes without obligation pulling you in another direction. That sense of ownership is often underestimated, but it's one of the most empowering financial experiences you can have. With that control comes flexibility. You can choose to save a larger portion of your income without feeling squeezed. You can invest earlier and more consistently, which gives your money more time to grow. Even your everyday spending becomes more intentional because it's no longer constrained by repayments. It's not about suddenly becoming restrictive, it's about finally having options. There's also a psychological shift that happens here. When you're in debt, part of your financial energy is always tied to the past. You're constantly looking backward, trying to fix or manage what has already happened. But once you've cleared those obligations, your focus moves forward. You start thinking in terms of building rather than recovering. And that change in mindset often leads to better financial decisions because you're no longer operating under pressure. It's important to understand that this transformation isn't about having more money, it's about having more control over the money you already earn. Two people can have the same income, but the one without debt has significantly more freedom in how that income is used. Over time, that freedom compounds into better opportunities, stronger financial stability, and a greater sense of confidence. So when people say paying off debt changes everything, this is what they mean. It gives you back the ability to direct your own financial life. Instead of your income being partially claimed before you even touch it, it becomes a tool you can fully use. And that shift from obligation to ownership is where real financial progress begins. Debt doesn't just affect your bank balance, it quietly occupies your mental space. Even when you're not actively thinking about it, it's there, influencing your decisions in subtle ways. It shows up when you hesitate before making a purchase, when you feel a sense of unease checking your account, or when unexpected expenses create disproportionate stress. This constant background pressure can become so normal that you stop noticing it, but it shapes how you think and act every single day. When you're carrying debt, many of your decisions are driven by urgency rather than intention. You prioritize avoiding penalties, keeping up with minimum payments, and managing due dates. This creates a kind of mental clutter. Your brain is constantly juggling obligations, which reduces your ability to focus on long-term planning. It's not just about financial stress, it's about reduced clarity. You're making decisions in a reactive state, often choosing what feels safest in the moment rather than what is actually best for your future. Once that debt is removed, the first thing most people notice is relief, but what follows is even more valuable: mental space. Without those recurring obligations, your mind is no longer preoccupied with keeping everything afloat. That frees up cognitive energy. You can think more clearly, evaluate options more objectively, and make decisions without the same emotional weight attached to them. This clarity changes how you approach money. Instead of constantly asking, can I manage this? You begin asking, is this aligned with my goals? That's a completely different mindset. You're no longer just trying to stay on track. You're actively choosing your direction. And when decisions come from clarity rather than pressure, they tend to be more thoughtful and more effective. Another important shift is how you respond to uncertainty. When you're in debt, unexpected situations feel more threatening because your margin for error is smaller. A surprise expense isn't just inconvenient, it can disrupt your entire system. That's why stress levels tend to be higher. But without debt, you gain breathing room. Even if your income hasn't changed, your financial structure is more stable. That stability makes challenges feel manageable rather than overwhelming. Over time, this reduced stress leads to better habits. You're more likely to plan ahead, to build an emergency fund, and to think strategically about your next steps. Not because you're forced to, but because you now have the mental capacity to do so. Your decisions become proactive rather than reactive, and that's where real progress happens. It's also worth noting that clarity improves confidence. When you understand your financial position without layers of obligation clouding it, you feel more in control. That confidence doesn't come from having everything figured out. It comes from knowing that your decisions are based on a clear, stable foundation. And that makes it easier to stay consistent, even when things don't go perfectly. So while paying off debt certainly reduces stress, the bigger transformation is how it sharpens your thinking. It removes noise, simplifies your financial life, and allows you to approach decisions with intention. And when your thinking improves, your outcomes usually follow. When you're in debt, your entire financial approach is shaped by caution. You're not thinking about growth, you're thinking about stability. Every decision is filtered through one question: can I afford for this to go wrong? And when the answer is often no, you naturally avoid taking risks. Even opportunities that could improve your situation start to feel uncomfortable because uncertainty becomes something you simply can't accommodate. This creates a defensive mindset. You focus on protecting what you have, maintaining steady income, and avoiding anything that might disrupt your ability to meet your obligations. In many ways, this is a rational response. Debt reduces your margin for error, so playing it safe feels like the responsible thing to do. But over time, this caution can hold you back. You might delay learning new skills, avoid investing, or pass on opportunities that require short-term uncertainty for long-term gain. Once you're out of debt, that equation changes. It's not that you suddenly become reckless, it's that you gain the ability to consider risk more objectively. Without fixed repayments weighing you down, your financial foundation becomes more stable. You now have the space to absorb small setbacks without them turning into major problems. That shift alone opens the door to a completely different way of thinking. Risk, in this context, starts to feel less like danger and more like possibility. You can begin to evaluate opportunities based on their potential upside, not just their immediate downside. For example, you might consider investing your money, knowing that short-term fluctuations won't affect your ability to cover essential expenses. You might explore starting a side business, understanding that even if it takes time to grow, you're not under pressure to generate instant returns. This doesn't mean every risk is worth taking. In fact, one of the biggest advantages of being debt-free is that you can afford to be selective. You're no longer forced into decisions by urgency, so you can take the time to assess what aligns with your goals. You can research, plan, and make calculated moves instead of reacting out of necessity. That's where real progress happens, not in taking big risks blindly, but in taking thoughtful risks with a clear purpose. There's also an emotional component to this shift. When you're in debt, fear tends to dominate your decision-making. The fear of falling behind, the fear of unexpected costs, the fear of losing control. Once that pressure is removed, fear doesn't disappear completely, but it loses its influence. You become more comfortable with uncertainty, which is essential for growth. After all, most meaningful opportunities involve some level of risk. Over time, this increased risk tolerance can significantly impact your financial trajectory. Investing earlier, pursuing better opportunities, and being open to change all contribute to long-term growth. Two people with similar incomes can end up in very different positions simply because one was able to take advantage of opportunities while the other remained constrained by obligations. So the real change after paying off debt isn't that risk disappears, it's that your relationship with it evolves. You move from avoiding risk at all costs to managing it intelligently. And that shift, from fear-driven decisions to opportunity-driven thinking, is what allows you to move forward rather than just stay in place. When you're in debt, your financial life often revolves around a simple, repetitive cycle. You earn, you spend, and then you repay. Most of your effort goes into maintaining that loop. Even when you try to get ahead, progress feels slow because a portion of your resources is constantly being redirected toward past consumption. Over time, this creates a pattern where money flows out just as quickly as it comes in, leaving very little behind to build anything meaningful. This is what keeps many people stuck in a consumption-driven mindset. It's not necessarily about overspending, it's about the structure they're operating within. When repayments are a fixed part of your monthly life, your financial decisions become centered around managing expenses rather than creating value. You might budget carefully and make responsible choices, but the overall system is still designed to sustain obligations, not to generate growth. Once debt is removed, that structure changes in a fundamental way. The money that was previously committed to repayments becomes available again, and this creates a new opportunity. You can start directing your resources toward building instead of maintaining. This is where the shift from consumption to creation begins. Creation, in a financial sense, is about using your money to produce something that adds value over time. This could mean building savings, investing in assets, developing new income streams, or even investing in your own skills. The key difference is that your money is no longer disappearing. It's being positioned to grow or to support future opportunities. Instead of constantly resetting to zero each month, you start building momentum. This shift also changes how you think about spending. When you're in a consumption cycle, spending is often immediate and short term. The focus is on meeting needs or wants in the present. But when you move into a creation mindset, you begin to evaluate spending based on its long-term impact. You start asking different questions. Does this move me forward? Is this helping me build something? That doesn't mean you stop enjoying your money. It means your spending becomes more intentional. Another important aspect of this transition is consistency. Building wealth or creating value doesn't usually come from one big decision. It comes from small, repeated actions over time. Once you're debt-free, you have the capacity to be consistent. You can set aside money regularly, invest steadily, and stick to a plan without interruptions caused by financial pressure. And over time, that consistency compounds into significant results. There's also a sense of progress that comes with creation. When you're only repaying debt, it can feel like you're running in place. But when you're building something, whether it's an emergency fund, an investment portfolio, or a new source of income, you can actually see your efforts accumulate. That visible progress reinforces good habits and keeps you motivated to continue. Ultimately, this is where the real transformation happens. Paying off debt isn't just about clearing a balance, it's about changing the direction of your financial life. You move from a system that drains your resources to one that grows them. And once that shift takes place, your money starts working with you instead of against you. That's what allows you to move beyond simply managing your finances and start actively shaping your future.